Alright, so you have finally reached the level of being able to use the remote collar, and so now it's time to learn how all this stuff works, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, what the background is on this collar, and how to use it appropriately. So that's what we're going to walk through now. When you meet with me, this collar is already going to be set up for you. So there's nothing that I'm going to show you in this video as far as you trying to change settings or anything like that. It's going to come ready to roll how we train. Okay? So first I'm going to walk you through the remote and all the buttons, and then the receiver, and then we'll get into how to turn everything on and off, and then some just basics on what the levels mean and the theory and kind of process behind how to use this with your dog. Alright, so here we go. So here is your remote. Alright, when I flip the remote over this way, you're going to see this T button. T means tone. This is going to be recall for your dog. So every time I tap this button when everything is turned on, it's going to make a tone sound on the receiver, and the dog has been conditioned that when he or she hears that to come to me and get food. So T is always positive. It's never a warning in the sense of, hey, I asked my dog to do something, they didn't do it. I'm going to tone them to come to me instead of correcting them. So that's not what we're going to do. T is always, this is more, we're hanging out in the field, the dog is on playtime, it's time to go home. Recall, come here Snoopy, get some food, time to go home. Okay, so that's recall. T is recall. Flipping the remote over, you're going to see a couple different things back here. One, this big L button, and you'll notice here that it says on, off, and light. This is how we turn on the remote only, okay? Not the receiver, just the remote, okay? So if I press and hold this L button for about 2 seconds, I've turned it on, right? You saw the red, the screen came on, it gives me some numbers that we're going to talk about here in a second. Now, if I press and hold this button again for about 3 seconds, it's going to shut off, okay? So it's on and off is your big L button. You'll also notice that it is a light, and I'm going to show you that when we turn on the receiver. But essentially this button also will serve as turning the beacon light on the collar. Okay, so it kind of has a couple different functions, but it's just as far as like turning on the remote, we're going to press and hold this button for 2 seconds, turn the screen on, we're good to go. Okay, I'll leave that on for now, so you can see some other features later. This small little button here says M/C. If you see that in the light, M means momentary, C means continuous stimulation. Okay? We are always going to work in continuous, which means if I press and hold the black stim button down, it will send stim to the receiver for up to 10 seconds, and then it will shut off on its own. Okay, so that's all that button means. Like I said, it's already set up in continuous. You don't need to worry about that. That's just how we're going to train. Is I want you to have the ability to tap or continuous stim. And when you're in continuous mode, it gives you that option. I can nick the dog like this, or I can press and hold for a longer correction if need be. Okay? Down here at the bottom, you'll notice this little rubber gasket. When you flip this up, this is where your charge cord goes. You plug it in there to charge up the remote. The remote will last about 5 to 6 days, because just like you saw while I was talking, the screen went dark. It goes into a sleep mode. So you can get a lot of life out of the battery on this remote without having to charge it. I don't recommend charging it every night or something like that, because similar to our cell phones, the battery will not be as effective over time. So what you want to do, and this will also be the same on your receiver when we turn that on, is you see the little, I call it the smiley face down here. You see how that gives like a little blinking light? That's your battery indicator. So if you see green, you're good. If you see orange, you need to charge. And if you see red, it's low fuel, it's going to die any second. Okay, so that's kind of what you need to be just looking for to make sure that your remote battery is still okay. All right. Moving on to the top, this is your stim level selector dial. That's a mouthful. But basically this is how you change how much stimulation goes to the receiver. If I turn it clockwise, it goes up. If I go counterclockwise, it goes down. Okay? And what this whole unit essentially is a TENS unit. If you've ever done any physical therapy or anything like that, that's what it is. So it's not a traditional shock collar, like if you hit this button and this isn't on appropriately, like spark's going to jump across and get the dog. That is not what we're dealing with. This is a TENS unit, which means this has to be sitting on the muscle of the dog so that when I send stim to the muscle, the dog knows what it means. Okay? So drastically different than what you probably have heard or maybe have had bad experiences with actual shock collars. What we're doing here is a TENS unit on a dog. So this is how you change the levels. Okay. Now you'll also see on the screen this 1D blinking. That means this remote is in one dog mode. The remote is paired for one dog. This company and this brand also has the ability to pair two dogs on one remote. So that's what the 1D means. Okay. So this is your level selector. This is how we turn up and down. And then moving on to your buttons on the side, this is your bread and butter. This is your main correction stim button. That's what the S stands for, stim. So when I turn this on, every time you see that red light, I'm sending stim to the collar. Okay? So when we talk about walking and healing with your dog and I tell you give your dog a correction because they messed up, that's the button that you're pressing. And we're pressing it like this. See how when I press it, I'm just tapping it. And like I told you before, if we're in a situation where we have to do continuous stim, I can do that. The red light means stim is going to the receiver. But for what you're going to be dealing with in the intro part of working with your dog, you're just tapping. That's all we're doing. Okay? Your red S is your boost button. So what this means is, depending on how we set up the remote, I can tell the remote when I hit this button to go to 20. So my boost is adding 10 levels to whatever level I'm working at. If this is my working number and my dog chases a squirrel, I can go right to boost and say, hey, don't do that. And then when I let it go, I'm back at my working level. Okay? Boost is going to be different for every dog. So we will set that up accordingly when we meet at our lesson based on my working with the dog and what I think the boost should be. Okay, but that's also a number that can change. It can go up or down as you get more and more accustomed to using this. Now, additionally, when it comes to the levels that we use when working with our dog, we always want to be higher than the dog's brain. Okay, so if my left hand is the dog's brain and my right hand is my remote, I always have to be like this as we go through life. Because my dog is going to get excited over some things and then other things he's not going to care about. But I always have to be in a position Or when I correct the brain, I'm saying, hey, don't do that, right? And what you're going to find is, in the house, hanging out, probably not a big deal. Counter surfing. There's pizza on the counter. Ooh, now the brain is here. I'm really excited to try and do that. So if I'm not like this, and instead I'm like this with my corrections, when the dog's brain is here, it does no good. You won't feel it. Okay? It's like I have puppets right now. So that's a really important thing to remember. You always want to be like this with your remotes. You always want full control over the dog and what they're doing. And then depending on how life is, if the dog's brain goes up, then my levels go up so that I can always say no, and then we can come back down once we get past that really exciting thing. Okay, so this is kind of the sliding scale I always want you to keep in mind. So our numbers are never set in stone. This does have a feature where you can like lock a number in. So even if you bump this by accident, the number would stay the same. But we're not going to train like that for now because you're going to find that life fluctuates. It goes up and it goes down. So on a daily walk, you might be starting at 7, and then we're walking along and, oh, we saw, another dog, or we saw a deer, or we saw whatever the thing is, and I need to go up to 31 to say, hey, don't do that. And then that really exciting thing goes away and the brain isn't where it is anymore, and now I can go back down to 6, 7, 8. Okay? So that's how we're going to be training as far as walking and using the numbers. Okay? Okay, so now we've turned on the remote. Now we need to turn on our receiver. And if you notice, there's a red button here, and there's a red dot here, and all it is, it's a magnet on each piece of equipment. So when I touch these two magnets together, I get a green light that comes on. And so now I have connection with my thing, right? Yeah, I just tricked my dog because she heard the tone. And she's like, what's going on? So now I have connection with the receiver. I'm correcting, it's going to the receiver, it's receiving it. Okay? So red dot to red dot turns it on, red dot to red dot turns it off. Okay? Notice the remote is still on because we already covered to turn on the remote, we use the big L button, right? So the only reason you have these red dots is to turn on the receiver. All right, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now that we have everything turned on, remember what I told you about the L button. If everything's turned on and I press my big L button again, I'm going to get this cool little searchlight, which is really helpful when you're walking your dog at night. If I press it again, I can get a solid light for night walking. And if I press it one more time, it turns off. Okay? So when you're using this big L button, you press and hold to turn on the remote. If I press it any other time after that, I'm going to activate the light so long as the receiver is turned on. Then, if I press it again, I get my solid light. And then I press it one more time and it turns off. So this is your basic setup for turning everything on and off. Some other features on this setup, everything is waterproof. The remote floats. You also have the ability to charge the receiver by doing the same thing. You're going to flip this rubber piece up and plug it in. Okay? You'll notice on the receiver, it's going to be the same thing. When this is turned on, green is good, orange, you should charge it. You have about 30 minutes left. Red, it's going to die any second. Okay, so when you take this off at the end of the day, before you go and turn it off, check your indicator light, and that will tell you if you need to charge it. All right. I think that's probably about it as far as how to turn everything on and off. Last thing I will say, fitting this is really important as we discussed earlier. These contact points need to be snug on the dog's muscle. If you have a dog that is long-haired, I recommend a couple things. Sometimes you can brush some of the fur out of the way and then place this where you brush the fur out of the way onto the skin and then tighten. Some dogs that are really, really long hair, I've recommended just trimming a patch of their fur, so it makes it really easy for you to just put it on and tighten it. Lastly, I will say that you want to also ensure that you are moving this around on the dog's neck throughout the day. So don't leave it in one spot longer than about 5 hours, just to avoid any kind of irritation on the skin. That is especially important if they get wet. If your dog gets wet, take this off as soon as you get home, because moisture will get in between the contact points in the skin and it will irritate the skin and kind of cause like sores. Okay, so it's not the end of the world if it happens, but if it does happen, put some Neosporin on it, move this to a different part of the dog's neck, and just make sure that every 4 or 5 hours you're just moving it from one side of the neck to the other. All right, so that is your mini educator rundown, and as always, you have me if you have any questions.